everyone, and welcome to the 24-hour Go Stadium stream to thank you, Niantic, and thank you, Silph, for all the hard work they've done to celebrate 1 year of PvP in the game. Today we have Dronpes from the Silph Arena and the Silph Road with us. And we also have Sir Maximus, the head organizer of the mega tournament, which just reached over 445, I believe, RSVPs as of a couple hours ago. So will be, if all of those people or even most of those people actually join the tournament, will be the largest tournament that we've ever had in the history of this game. So a lot to be excited about. And we have this 24-hour stream going in which we wanted to really celebrate the community. One of the key principles of Go Stadium is to build the community. And there's so many great content creators and battlers and media teams that work very hard to bring you different forms of content to help you guys excel in the game. And one of the people that we could not have done this without is Dronpes from Silph. So Dronpes, if you want to say hey to everyone, let them know who you are. I'm sure everyone knows, but maybe there's a few that don't.
Sure. Well, hello everybody. I don't typically get in front of the camera because I'm really bad on camera, so this is out of my comfort zone, but thanks for inviting me on. It's I think an important day to celebrate kind of the 1 year anniversary and just take a moment to look back at how far we've come from zero to, having a pretty awesome ecosystem. Makes me really optimistic for the next year. And yeah, for those who don't know me or know about Silph, I founded the Silph Road back in 2016. I think it was January 2016, about 6 months before Pokémon GO came out. It had been announced, and we were really excited about the idea of maybe making an international trading network and shuttling Pokemon, because we kind of thought there'd be scarcity, like desert Pokemon in the desert. None of that ended up happening, but we ended up collecting a bunch of like-minded people and into a pretty big community. And by the end of it, it was, I think, one of the most awesome Pokemon GO communities. So we've done all sorts of things over the last 3 years, but definitely top of my list right now is the arena, which has been just an amazing labor of love from so many people. But I mean, we are so tired all the time, but honestly, it's like been a phenomenal journey to be able to just start from zero and build a competitive ecosystem and see thousands of communities around the world jump in. We have a lot of responsibilities we feel on our shoulders to do it right, do a good job, and keep it balanced and keep it fair. And I mean, it's a lot of work, but honestly, the community's been fantastic. Everybody's been really awesome. So I come kind of as a representative of Silph, but I mean, we have dozens of people that help with the arena in huge ways. There's the more visible ones like, PV Poke and others who have made, really visible and amazing and helpful resources. But there's also dozens of people whose names you don't know who help deal with support tickets when someone emails in and says this tournament is full of spoofers or whatever. I mean, it becomes a lot of thankless work really quickly when you do a global thing like this. So I'm sure Go Stadium has a very similar core of people who are doing the thankless grind work, keeping it all running. And I do want to give a big shout out to everybody on the arena team for being so amazing, because literally we couldn't even do a tenth of this without the amazing people that stepped up. So yeah, I'm excited to be here, answer some questions or whatever. I've got the chat going, I guess, on another monitor. So
yeah, I think everyone's going to be buying you a Dr. Pepper this weekend, so you may need to buy some extra luggage.
Well, I'm my economy basic, so maybe just keep it small, because
yeah. So kind of like what you were saying, this game and this community would not be what it is without this community. And I think not only the Silph Arena, but really even before Arena was founded and before PvP was introduced, the Silph Road has been a long-standing resource and team of people that has really helped this game and these communities flourish. So one of our first questions was, what was your inspiration behind creating the Silph Arena, and how did that kind of come from the Silph Road to where we are now?
It's a good question. I mean, like I said a second ago, the Silph Road kind of ended up gathering a lot of like-minded people that were, you know, interested in building more. I think Niantic games are uniquely community-oriented. I mean, lots of games have awesome, thriving communities, but Niantic games are geolocated communities, which is a weird dimension to add to like a game community, you know. So you've got literal city groups. Like, I don't know any other video game that really does that. And it's like, I don't know, something about that really spoke to our core team, and we were like, man, think of all the things, you know, that we could build. Several of us were technical, so, you know, we could build servers and sites and services, but then there's the whole social component. So honestly, by the time PvP was coming out, it was, what would it have been, 2018? I mean, it had been announced for years, and so obviously we'd been chewing on that. Trading came out and it was super different than we'd expected, you know, with the not being able to chain trades. We can only trade it once. Obviously that destroyed the Silph Road's original dream, because it was like, oh, well, so much for a trading network. You really can't do that. We were wondering what PvP would look like, if it would be a similarly vastly different from the main series, right? But as we looked at the APK and as we started to like just kind of read what their vision for it was, it started to become pretty clear that like, yeah, I think there's gonna be enough building blocks that we can try and put something together. And I felt like the Silph Road had a uniquely large platform at that moment in Pokemon Go history that we could try and launch something and get kind of critical mass, you know. For leaderboards to matter, everyone else needs to think they matter, right? Like, if you could just start your own leaderboard over here, but if no one cares, then there's no glory being atop it, you know? So really the goal was, can we make something that matters for, you know, almost 100 countries? Can we get everybody like caring and give glory to the people who are actually the best in the world? And obviously the mechanics of PvP were a huge gamble. We didn't know if it would suck. We didn't know if it would be really simplistic, or if there'd even be strategy, or if it was, you know, gonna be really neutered. But we took a chance and we started to prepare. So by the time PvP was coming out, we'd already been in talks. We were already thinking like, how could you do, you know, a competitive scene with all these uniquely frustrating restraints, you know? And then we had to build really fast. So we scrambled and we literally launched version 0.1 of the arena like weeks after Pokemon Go PvP started to exist. I can't remember how many days it was, but that was the fastest we'd ever launched anything, and a lot of all-nighters and a lot of decisions to try and balance things. And so, I mean, at the end of the day, like, we always wanted to do a competitive scene for PvP. Personally, one of my big passions is augmented reality. Like, I have very vividly in my mind a dream that a lot of us share, I think, of like having Pokemon battles in full AR, like where spectators are able to see like a stadium with these huge Pokemon down there like duking it out. I feel like there's just such a bright future for that technology. And I mean, Niantic is a lot of things, but honestly, they do push this into the consumer space. They do push the latest technology that hardware supports. So, I mean, to their credit, I think if that's ever going to happen, like, Niantic's the horse I'm betting on, I guess, to bring us to that. So I would love it if, you know, they continued to enhance and upgrade PvP over the years to the point where it became like that. And AR was a first-class experience for PvP in Pokemon Go. So, I mean, we still have that dream in mind. It would be amazing to get there. For that to happen, people had to use PvP, and no one was doing that. So we've been trying really hard to get the community to actually, you know, look at it, take a second look at it, really, because there's a very small ecosystem of us all here who do find the joy and value of it, but there's a lot more people we got to convert.
Yeah, and I think it's weekends like this that have so much packed into them in this humongous tournament that is going to help get us there. One of the things that we talk about at Go Stadium is part of building an esports culture and developing that culture within the game. You know, mobile gaming is on the rise, and we are really some of those that are at the forefront of it. I mean, you have obviously some of the other games that are played on mobile consoles like the Switch, but getting into truly mobile device competitive esports gaming is very much on the rise. So you were talking about how the initial Silph Road plan was to have this trading ecosystem, and then when Niantic introduced the trading system, that kind of all flew out the window. So one of the questions we had was, how difficult has it been to adapt with the changes that they've made to the game?
Oh gosh,
all the good ones.
It's a good question. It is honestly the worst. Like, people are always like, why don't you just announce the cups 3 months in advance so we can prep? It's like, dude, we would love to. Like, we do not like the Stardust cost. And I feel like the Pokemon Go competitive scene is really hindered by a lot of these constraints that other games aren't, which is why it's so exciting to me to see Niantic like continue to improve and balance PvP and launch Go Battle League, because it means they're going to be continuing to care about that as a core feature of the game, which will be great for the health of the whole ecosystem. But honestly, we have to balance like so many factors that I think a lot of times people don't think about. Like, for example, we had to come up with a way that people around the world would feel equally incentivized to play, in a big tournament, or if they could only get 8 people together. You don't want to feel like you don't have a shot at climbing to the top just because your community is small. And so, I mean, we have to balance on the one hand, all of that, the disparate sizes of communities and the isolated player clusters, all these weird things that most games don't have to deal with. And then we also have to deal with the dimension of the tournament organizers. So those are like amazing volunteers from communities around the world who just step up and host these things for free, often for negative money. Like, they spend their own money to like bring prizes or rent venues. And it's like, we need to be very careful not to make the arena incentivize putting even more pressure on those guys, because the people who are hosting the tournaments are the all-stars of this ecosystem. So like, we got Sir Maximus on here doing the LA tournament, like, thankless job, but like, it's an amazing service to provide, to host a tournament for your community, especially the ones we see lean into it, like him, where you're going to be putting on a massive party for everybody. It's so much planning and work. So we didn't want to make that something that had to happen every weekend, or your community would be mad at you because you weren't letting them be competitive, right? Like, so that's one constraint. Whoa, I think that's me, sorry. But then on the other side of it is everything from Niantic, like you're asking about, where it's a moving target. We have to deal with, obviously things like happened this week where we lost, we gained rather a ton of moves, and we lost some meta relevant moves. They became irrelevant, things like that. When you're designing metas so that, you're keeping the scene fresh, you basically have to predict the future, like what's going to be relevant in 8 weeks from now in Pokemon Go, and that's a very difficult challenge. Then there's all the other constraints that Niantic has, I don't know, inadvertently maybe imposed on the scene, which is like legacy moves, which make a competitive scene super difficult. If you don't have legacy Umbreon, now you feel like you're at a disadvantage in the Ferocious Cup, and that's a hugely negative experience, right? So we're always trying to work around that, don't always succeed. Exhibit A, Ferocious, but like, I mean, really, it's difficult to deal with all the dimensions of scarcity and then all the dimensions of in-person tournaments, and try and make, sort of a protocol and procedure that's standardized in all these international countries, and still feels fair to everybody. So, I mean, I don't blame Niantic, because they didn't ask us to do this, right? This is the community just wanting this. But, I mean, there's definitely a few things they could do to make it easier on us.
Yeah, there's definitely some growing pains here.
So Sir Maximus, I know, there has been so much work that has gone into this event. I guess I'll ask you a question. How do you feel about organizing such a large tournament, and what, kind of inspired you to bring this sort of mecca of PvP to Los Angeles?
So originally it started off with, when PvP and Silph Arena was created, it was just, like you said, a couple of people, 8 people tournaments and stuff. And from there, it just was, I found the common core of everybody having a love for Pokemon. And then you find the smaller group that loves PvP so much that we just build together to see these people having a great time, and just build a community of PvPers across all of these cities here in Southern California, to where when King asked in his tweet, can somebody throw an event, and Bess and Wes was able to connect me to King, we were going to do it for that community who builds, the community who bonds. And that's all that this tournament is, that Sunday is. It's just allowing these people, you know, basically being a vehicle to allow these players to be the best in the world, allowing it to be an event where it makes sense, or it's worth flying out from Canada, from the East Coast, and traveling to meet like-minded people in this group who have a love for Pokemon, and specifically love for PvP. So that's all that this is. It's just an event to allow people to have a great time, and that's all that it is. There's no other kind of I wanted this to be the biggest tournament. I just wanted it to be a big enough tournament to give these people a shot, and it just happened to turn into what it is now.
So with that being the largest tournament, that most likely, unless something crazy happens, this is going to be the biggest tournament in Silph Arena history. So I don't know if everybody knows yet, but Dronpes, you're going to be here, right?
That is the plan. I did buy flights just a bit ago, so I think if it's going to be the world record holder, and I don't know who's going to top this because this is a gigantic tournament, this record may stand for a while, so we thought, well, we better get down there. So I will be there, just flying in Sunday, flying out Monday, but just wanted to see it go down.
Awesome. So what are you most excited to see this weekend?
Honestly, we've never seen a tournament this big. I'd kind of like to see how it functions. I mean, even our world championships last year, which will be continentals this year. I mean, I don't even think those were very big. You know, this thing has the potential to be 4 times bigger than those. And I think that's a really interesting pilot test. I'd like to see how it does, because I mean, if it works and if it's awesome, you know, there's other events we can host like that in the future. Internally, we've been calling them mega tournaments like everybody else does. I think mega tournaments are a really interesting kind of cultural focal point for the ecosystem. I think, yeah, we'll have continentals, you know, on the different continents, but like maybe these mega tournaments could be something that's more accessible to people, almost like a Safari Zone versus GoFest thing, right? But I mean, I'd love it if we could get the ecosystem continuing to mature to the point where mega tournaments have pretty sick prizes, you know, so they're kind of worth going to. It'd be a cool draw, and I think it would kind of just elevate the ecosystem. So, I mean, what I'm most excited to see, I always like to see Nick, but I think pretty much I'm most excited to just see how it all comes together and see what we can learn from it to make it smoother, or maybe it's just perfect and we start rolling it out in different places around the world. I know London's Finest did a similar one, but this one is going to blow that out of the water. So we'll see.
Yeah. And, you know, part of what you were talking about, in developing that esports culture, you know, there's got to be some incentive there. You know, everybody obviously wants to be high on the leaderboard, but they really want to be competitive as well. So with those large prize pools, I know this weekend we've got a $500 cash prize pool that's going to be paid out to the top 3 places. We're going to give away a lot of other prizes, some custom merchandise, and you know, to think that we're here now, and I remember that first stream with Nick and Dark Matter Wolf and Secret League. I mean, what has been your most favorite thing, or how far do you think we've actually come since that first stream where they were sitting in office chairs back to back or face to face even, you know, battling, and we were just tapping as furiously as we could, to now we have, you know, dynamic move mechanics, different move animations and things like that, and just the complexity of PvP has grown so much. So kind of tell us, how has your year been with Silph from going there to where we are now?
I mean, we've come a heck of a long way. I think we've started to establish conventions, like as a community. I think there's things that are expected now at these events, where back then, like, man, if you were gonna stream, I remember the early days of streaming, like, we literally didn't know how to get 2 phones on a stream with a camera. I mean, it was like, and we started butting up against all the hardware problems. Like, heck, even Worlds last year in Chicago, we forced North America's best players had to play on an iPhone 6s, which is pretty ghetto. So, but that was about the only way we could, guarantee that stream would even work, and then it even didn't. I mean, so when you talk about how far have we come, I mean, well, streaming works now. That's a huge step forward. And honestly, I feel like more and more people are starting to understand what to even look for on a stream. Like what even makes a good play. I mean, back in the day, there just wasn't that much material out there for people to even get familiar with what makes a great player. So, I mean, yeah, the mechanics have continued to improve, and then there's been some regressions, but in general, I think the momentum is very positive for the actual mechanics of PvP. And then the streaming, culture, I think, has been working out the kinks, which is going to be important. I think when Go Battle League goes, I think streaming PvP is going to start growing a lot faster. And I'm glad that we had this kind of beta year, all of us, to figure out the hardware and figure out how to stream.
What's wrong with an iPhone 6? I still have the SE.
I'm not sure. Can you even play Go?
I mean, it did take us 15 minutes to get you on this conference call, Matthew, so that is true.
Blame that on your phone. Yeah, no, I think in Dortmund we used iPhone 10s, but in the future the goal is to use the competitor's own device, and I think the community's figured that out enough now that we just show up with your phone, and if it's Android we do this, if it's iPhone we do this. And that, I mean, it's stupid to play a high-level competition on not your phone. Like, that sucks. So, I mean, those are just the growing pains of season 1, really, of the first year. And I look at it now, and it's just like, we're better than that now, and that's really good to see.
Oh yeah,
it's like, taken. Oh, go ahead, Matthew.
I was just saying how, if you look at, everybody we talk about the esport dynamic and the culture, and I believe that we're as Pokemon Go PvP goes, I think we're right there on the cusp of the esport, as far as, like, we have, thanks to Arena and the progressions and the suggestions and all the modifications to allow tournament organizers to run a smoother tournament, a more structured or organized tournament. It's given us a chance to really hit functionally an esports type of tournament. And now it's just a matter of getting it out there for people to see and making it more accessible. I think we're right there, and I'm hoping that the Sunday tournament really pushes it through the barrier and makes it like what you had touched on earlier, saying we can take this formula, if we find out how it works across the world, and share this, have a knowledge pool for people to run these, quote unquote mega tournaments. And I think we're there as far as the competitiveness. I think we're there as far as the organization and the like-minded people, and now it's just a matter of bringing us all together, networking, and I think it's a beautiful thing. This is what Pokemon was for us when we were 10, 12, 8 years old, and it's still there, thanks to Niantic bringing it to us in a mobile form, and thanks to Silph bringing it to us and that competitive nature from BGC or those Gen 1 competitive battle days. And like with esports, you have your own mechanical keyboard, you have your own mouse, so having your own phone, you have your own feel. I think those are the things that are there that everybody is just really excited for. And I really hope that Sunday, we knock it out of the park to really get people to do these every month, throughout the year, every season. I'm really excited for that. I'm really excited.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic year, and I know Dronpes was talking about learning the different stream methods, and honestly, it's been a challenge, definitely even for Go Stadium. We've got very talented people that help us. Alfendole, Miss Mystic, Jay Devon, Zionic, and King have helped on numerous occasions. So those people have been vital to growing this community. You've got the new up-and-comers like John Formakis and his trusty sidekick, Scrublord Dustin. Who doesn't love Scrublord Dustin? chat. And then we did have one chat question for Dronpes. Are you going to let everyone use iPads? They want to use the iPads like they did at the Worlds.
Let them use iPads. I don't know. I'm gonna have to double check with that. I must be missing what the controversial aspect of that is, because for me that doesn't sound like a red flag.
So one other question that we have before we let you go. Everybody, we ask this question a lot to different people, and we have to know, do you PvP?
Oh man, I don't know what the right answer to that question is. Would you rather I PvP and I'm mediocre, or I don't PvP? I don't compete in the arena on purpose. Because I'd be mediocre, but I do. What's that?
Same here. I'm mediocre as well.
Yeah. I found that a lot in the communities. Like, the people who are actually really out there building the community aren't always like the top 10 ranked players in the world, right? They have a different skill set and they're putting in a lot of work, but not at getting to be an elite player. And to me, that's not really the drive. I don't feel like this internal drive to be the best in the world at that. Like, that's not kind of my objective at all, and it never really was. I've always wanted to just bring that scene into reality, and that scene I was talking about a bit ago, like where it's full on AR battles in a stadium, with the elite players like duking it out and people cheering. Like, I have that vision in the back of my mind. And I mean, that's where I would like to pour my energy into, getting us there, in any way possible. But no, I PvP internally. I play with people unranked, off the record, and we test things out. But frankly, like, there's a lot better meta team than just me, figuring these things out and making these choices. Just while I'm on, I feel like I should share a little bit about that, because it's like, we, as the arena, like I was saying earlier, I feel a lot of weight on my shoulders about like this ecosystem, because we weren't elected, like, I mean, this wasn't some like, and we're not Niantic. We don't have this huge revenue stream where we can hire people to come in from 9 to 5 and solve these problems. We have to do this after our real jobs. And the decisions we make are far-reaching, in their impact. We have to design metas that, are going to make people spend dust. Like, I don't know, if you summed up all the stardust that we made people spend in the whole ecosystem, billions, and it's like, that's kind of a big responsibility. So we do have a really awesome meta team, and I want to give them a shout out, because it's like, all those restrictions that Niantic puts on this ecosystem, with Stardust being a cost and TMs being scarce, and being a random dice roll whether you're getting the move. I mean, and then legacies having limited availability, and some of them really important that are too scarce. I mean, working around all of that is really challenging. But this also goes to like kind of how far we've come from a year ago to now. Is like, we finally have like really good tools, I think, and some really bright people that are really going through a lot of iterations on these metas. A lot of the consumer tools like PvPoke are 1v1 an analysis. Like, they sum up your win rate, either in the long meta, everything, or the short meta, top 30, whatever, Pokebattler, right, the Matrix and things. It gets a lot more difficult to try and sim and analyze the actual teams, teams versus teams of, battle teams of 3. And that is a lot more computationally expensive, and you got to be really clever to, try and identify, is this going to be actually a fun meta? Is this how important are the legacies? How important are the things that you have to power up and max out to level 38, and it's like been our, constant challenge to be designing fresh metas for people, hopefully keeping them pretty inexpensive, but also balancing that way. And it's a fun challenge, but it's, I mean, a lot of times it's down to the wire. Like, the week we announce, like today, Fusion went out, the release for the Fusion Cup, which frankly, that's like I love this meta, like the Fusion meta. I like Timeless. I love the idea of the starter, tie-in, but like Fusion is like, it's the best of a lot of worlds, if you ask me. So it's going to be a really exciting meta. But like all the work that went into Fusion, I mean, geez, I wish we could like, maybe we should start doing that after the cups are concluded. We share everybody like kind of what we had predicted, like what the math showed when we simmed and simmed and simmed. And I mean, we've got some crazy histograms and things like that, you know, we definitely rely on tools like PvPoke, but you know, we have additional tools like beyond and in different dimensions. And by the time a meta is approved, like we've looked at so many dimensions, like it is really a lot of math and a lot of work. And I mean, it's been, how many metas have we done? I mean, we did all season 1 was 8 plus regionals plus worlds. So that's 10. And now we're 3 cups in, just announced the 4th, right? I mean, we've done 14 custom metas, something like that. That's pretty crazy when you think about it, to have to keep making, you know, metas like that. So the more we can overlap with Open Great League, I think that's great. The more we can rely on things that you're already powering up, that's great. The more you can rely on stuff that isn't a powerful legacy, all those things are important. But I feel like with Open or with Go Battle League, you know, going to be bringing a lot more importance to Open Great League and Open Ultra and Master. That's going to be a challenge for the arena this year. We want to try and get these cups overlapping the best we can with things that you have to power up anyway. Which is honestly super tough. To not be the same meta basically, and not be reliant on legacies or the other problems. So, I mean, I love when people give feedback on the cups in the arena server or elsewhere. I mean, it's like, we love seeing the community chew on it because we've done all this math by the time we launch a cup that like, sometimes it feels like we're watching people solve a puzzle we set, you know? So it's been a lot of fun to be sharing these. I wouldn't say all of our cups were the best, you know. Ferocious was obviously a controversial cup. We really weighed on weighed the pros and cons of Umbreon, and I think we made probably the wrong call on that one. It was just, there were options. You didn't need Umbreon. Obviously people won huge tournaments without Umbreon, but like, I think it's really important and interesting to see how the community reacts to the different constraints. So I feel like it's like all been a learning experience. Like we learned a lot from Ferocious, honestly. We learned a lot from other issues in season 1, you know, so our tools get better, our objectives get clearer. I feel like it's going to be pretty awesome with Go Battle League. So I really look forward to our next few metas. We've got some kind of cool stuff in the works.
I think that's very important, you know, that the community understands, and they're seeing it more and more now, where not only Silph is listening to the community and working so hard behind the scenes to give us fresh content and fresh things to dive into, but Niantic has really started doing that as well. And, you know, like you mentioned earlier, making decisions to balance PvP. And then I think, honestly, with the Fusion Cup announcement today, seeing those stipulations put in where, you know, it has to be a second charge move that's less than or equal to 50,000 Stardust. I mean, that's going to help people out tremendously. And then, you know, some strategic bans that were put in place specifically for maybe even some of the recent move updates. I'm assuming maybe that's why Dugong was banned, but maybe you can speak a little to that.
Yeah. I'm always hesitant to explain the reasoning behind bans because Krydos can do it a whole lot better than I can. But yeah, Dugong is weirdly powerful in this meta, much more so than Timeless. We were looking at it in Timeless because obviously it floated up to like, what, number 11 on PvPoke or something out of nowhere. And it was like, geez, that's a double legacy moveset. And even though it doesn't have a good second charge move, Hydro Pump or something, going off the cuff here, sorry. it was like, it didn't need it, you know, to still be pretty darn good with just its ice typing. And so, I mean, to look at it in the new meta, the Fusion meta, it's even better because there's no Lapras in front of it. Right now, you can just use Lapras instead for Timeless. And that's kind of the boiled down why it stays. Even though it's number 11 double legacy, it's okay. But it's not okay in Fusion. It is much more important. So that one is a straight legacy ban because it's an annoying legacy, just like an Umbreon. It's not probably as bad as Umbreon, which was very oppressive. It wasn't ferocious, but yeah, that one is because of its legacy moveset. The others are actually because of Stardust. Even though most of us have Medicham or a Azumarill by this point, this cup is not really designed for us. It's more designed for the new people that we're hoping are coming into the ecosystem in January. It is just like if you had to level it up to level 38 and it had to be on your roster, that's a lot of dust to sink in on your first cup. If everyone remembers like powering up Medicham and Boulder and just realizing how expensive this could become so quickly, like, geez, it was all of a sudden, it was like, whoa, that was actually an extremely expensive thing to put together, my team. And yeah, that we want to soften that entry point for people coming in January. So we really do hope that all the thousands of communities around the world, their tournament organizers, are able to use this cup and say, like, this is a very beginner friendly cup. There's no expensive, charge moves you have to buy. There's nothing needs to be powered up super high. And honestly, all the stuff you're going to use on your team, you're going to probably use in Go Battle League, or at least, Altaria and these others that are, pretty critical for Great League. And so it's worth it. There's no real wasted Stardust on this cup, which is one of the biggest problems with custom metas. So we're hoping that takes that argument out of people's mouths and gives the organizers the ability to woo a few more people to come battle with them, because it's a good investment to do the Fusion Cup. Like if you don't have those Pokemon, you should, So we hope it works. We hope it's, an easier thing to sell, basically, for the tournament organizers to the new people coming into the ecosystem.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Back in my hometown is Birmingham, Alabama, and I think the most we've had at a PvP tournament is maybe 40 or 50 people most, and that was when we did Mirror Cup. They voted, and we did 3 different cups. I think we did Boulder, Tempest, and what was the other one we did? Twilight. One of everybody's favorites. We did Twilight. That's always been a crowd favorite. So when we plan these cups out, I think it's very critical that we do have some sort of incentive as we bring in this new onslaught of players that are going to be diving into this for the first time. And I think that's definitely a great step forward in planning for the future. So, and speaking of planning into the future, you guys announced a roadmap for Silph Arena throughout this year, and changing kind of what you did in season 1 of the sort of World Championships format for North America, South America, and Europe. So, and now that's changed to Continentals with a Worlds format. So tell us a little bit about Silph's roadmap for that competitive scene, and we're supposed to have a true world champion in season 2, correct?
Well, before we get into that, I wanted to tell Silph in general. You're talking about your team, the meta team, an analytical team. You have your own metrics and everything. And if people really take a step back outside of being inside the PvP as a battler and look at it more from a design standpoint, your design team has grown tremendously as far as breaking new ground with the meta creation that was Boulder. The whole double Skarmory, double Medicham strategies that people were taking advantage of because of that little assumed we're only going to use one of each Pokemon like you would normally in the games, to now saying, well, we're going to explicitly say one of each gender or one of each species, and then moving on to creating metas that are a little bit more balanced, more open. You can look at the team being more critical of themselves. And like you said, it's a very thankless job. These aren't people who are getting in front of a camera talking about it. These are people really sacrificing a lot and using a lot of resources and racking their brains to make a balanced, fun, entertaining meta. And sometimes you have experiments that people may not receive well at the beginning, like maybe Ferocious. A lot of people might be very critical of it. But when you take a step back and look at it, trying to do something new and fresh and not make things stale, where it's just, okay, we're just doing Open League, Light, Open League, Legends, Open League, all these different things, you can take a greater appreciation for that Silph team. really developing these metas both in the past and going forward. So I just want to say, as an organizer and for communities like La Mirada, Norwalk, all these people nearby me, thank you. Thank you, and thank your team.
Well, thanks. It means a lot. And it means a lot coming from a tournament organizer, because we think about the tournament organizer's perspective and their difficult job of getting their community on board and excited about something all the time. It's not an easy job, and even just being a local tournament organizer is often really thankless. So we really are grateful for all the tournament organizers who have built this scene. I mean, one Discord or one online group does not make a competitive ecosystem. There are over 2,000 communities that participate in this ecosystem, and that's why it's a community. It's global, and it's amazing. Like, I really just, it blows my mind. Sometimes I just lay in bed thinking, like, man, like, Indonesia just had a massive tournament. Like, that is so amazing. I've never been there. I don't know anybody there, but they're, using our meta, and they're having a good time, and they're enjoying Pokemon. Like, that's just, it's so awesome. And I mean, that's just fantastic. So thank you for the kind words. I'll pass that on to the whole team, because they do work very hard to make, some calculated risks, obviously, with every meta. You can't predict the full future, but they try really hard to predict the future. So let's see, you were asking what was on the roadmap. And yeah, we call them World Championships in Season 1, but they were the World Championship circuit, really. There are 3 of them. We want to have one in Season 2. We want to have the very best, actually be the one who beats all the other continental champions. So that's not an easy thing. And it kind of depends on how the arena manages to operate, and these things cost a lot of money. But our goal is to have a continental on each of the major continents hubs, and then hopefully 4 if we could swing that. We did 3 last year, right? Germany, Chicago, and Santiago, Chile. We're looking into the 4th area. Would be really cool to get our 4th. A, because it'd be great to grow out there, but B, it would be really cool to have that, World Championships be 4 people instead of 3 people. It's just a lot cleaner and a lot more fun. So that's definitely what's at the end of the roadmap. On the way there, we're going to pass through regionals, and honestly, regionals has us really excited. Regionals was probably the biggest experiment of Season 1. The idea that we, who don't have a nexus in all of these regions, could hold a standardized invitational based on people's performance to that point in the season in 200 regions. I mean, that was a massive undertaking, and boy, it was clunky. We did a lot of things right, and a lot of things were really difficult. So, I mean, we've learned a lot from that. Obviously, we built tools for that, and now we have those, so we're building on top of those for Season 2 regionals. But I mean, it's going to be a lot smoother process this time around. Like, we sent out invites in waves last time, and one wave got messed up. There were a bunch of wild cards that got into regionals that shouldn't have, and we just had to say, screw it, like, good luck, you're a wild card. And that, isn't exactly great. That's not 100% fair. And we're going to ideally be sending all regional invites in one wave this time. We'll be able to tell regional hosts the capacity to expect, which we were blind on last season. So, I mean, it'd be like not even knowing like how many people are going to come. There's a lot that will operate operationally, protocol-wise, differently for Season 2 regionals. It'll just be better. But a lot of it will be very familiar too. We have posted how to get to regionals. It's very similar, same as last. Very similar to Season 1's qualifications. Not quite as much cascading, because it's really not necessary. Just overcomplicates things. But overall, we're pretty excited about regionals, and we're excited, especially for Season 2, that we could cram in more cups before regionals. So there's more chance to prove yourself. People don't know this, but the Season 2 rank algorithm is kinder towards people who are getting better later. So just because you had did poorly in the first cup or 2 or whatever, doesn't mean you're hosed. Like, you can climb faster in Season 2 than you could in Season 1. So I mean, nobody's out of the running for regionals yet. I do want to caution communities, though, that if they're not hosting cups and they are thinking about hosting regionals, they need to host some cups, because you do have to have hosted a few cups to be eligible to host regionals. We want to see that track record, obviously. So we're getting closer to regionals. It's kind of exciting. Behind the scenes, we're already working really hard on regionals, but I mean, it's going to be over 200 locations, which is wild. And honestly, it's an incredibly ambitious thing to do, but like it feeds into our continentals and then into worlds, which is super freaking exciting. Like we get so hyped about this, and we want worlds to be like super cool this season. So we're working really hard behind the scenes on all this stuff.
I know there's a lot of people that are very excited about that, and definitely everyone, all the communities that are around there, all the organizers that are listening, you know, make sure that you're doing your due diligence, and regional invites are going out in January, correct?
Regional host applications are going out in January.
Right.
Yep. And then the invites much later. So we posted this calendar somewhere on silph.gg. But yeah, we were able to cram in a lot more cups before regionals this season, thank goodness. It was a condensed season last year because we launched in January, and then Go Fests were coming up in summer. So we don't have that problem this time. So you get to prove yourself for a lot longer. And I wouldn't say anybody's out of the running yet for regionals. Like, these cups matter. Timeless and Fusion and the next one will all matter. So I'd say keep going. People that bloom late, they screwed up the first cups and then they do really well, they very well could still be at regionals. So yeah, hopefully that answers your questions about that.
So I want to do one last thing, and I have to steal this from my friend Ken over at the Lured Up podcast and put on my tinfoil hat. You mentioned that fourth region, and I can't help but speculate that it may be Asia Pacific, looking at maybe the birthplace of Pokemon.
I might get in trouble with my team if I talk about this, but I will just get in trouble. Okay. Yeah, we are looking at APAC as a fourth region. I think it sucks for Australia and Japan and, you know, Asia to be, there's, yeah, Laura in the chat's like, shh. Yeah, sorry about that. But I'll put the caveat on it right now, though. We are very much not confirmed on that. It depends how that scene grows. And a big part of that is like translations, right? Like we don't have Silph.gg fully translated in all those languages. We do have it in like 16 languages, which is phenomenal. And shout out to everyone who's helped translate Silph.gg and make it available in their language. That's just another thankless task that really grows the scene. But I mean, especially in Japanese, I don't know what our translation percent is at, but it hovers around like 50%. So like half this, you know, experience of doing the tournament is not in Japanese. And that is, I think, really a hindrance to adoption over there. So, I mean, if anybody on here is fluent in Japanese or knows somebody who can help translate, that's something we're always looking for more help with. We just have, you know, an online thing that people can just contribute translations to. And that will help this thing grow like so much faster in those areas. But yeah, to answer your question, I would personally just really, really like to see our fourth region be over in APAC, so we can be closer to Japan, closer to Australia, and some of these big communities, Philippines, Indonesia. We've got some, you know, big communities that are holding big tournaments out there. And it sucks that like they're way too far away from European continentals and, you know, Chicago and Chile. That's not feasible for them to really get to. So that's the goal. Again, I just think it would be amazing to have the 4 continental champs facing off for the world title. I mean, it's just so clean, and it would be a really great thing, I think, for the Asia Pacific region to have their own regionals out there, so they don't have to travel. So
and a flavor with the game being 4 regions, the Elite Four, how does that not work out so beautifully?
The Elite Four, that's right, man. Yeah, I think we're going to give champions handshake badges, just like we did for a few of the content creators so far, so that when you meet these guys, they're legends. I mean, I'll say this, like our ranking algorithm is really rad, and it's about to get like even better. We're always working on improving the ranking algorithm. It's a weird constraint of Pokemon Go to work with so few data points and still have to rank, you know, tens of thousands of people who are very slightly different in performance. But kind of like how, you know, I will say rank number 1 in the world is not an easy thing to do on the leaderboards, but I think sometimes the tournament is a truer measure, because ranking can be affected by a lot of things. But if you're ranked number whatever and you go to a tournament and you biff it, I mean, you weren't reliable, you weren't consistent, right? So, I mean, actually winning the tournament, it's like the Olympics, right? Like you can be really good and ranked whatever nationally, and then you can go do the qualifiers and make it in. But like, it's the Olympics that counts, man. Like you're going home with a medal or you're not, you know? And that is where the gold medalists are made. It's not, I mean, it's not the person who's ranked really great, but then got bronze. I mean, no one remembers that, you know? Like, so, I mean, that's kind of how we view some of the arena things. It's like the legends are made in the actual tournament, you know? And that's another reason why we like seeing these huge mega tournaments like Sundays, because like, you know, legends are born and made at these big tournaments, the ones that matter and have a lot of eyeballs. So I'm, you know, excited for Go Battle League, and it's a virtual experience, it looks like. I don't know, but the in-person, I hope Niantic at least will do some in-person stuff. Like when King did that invitational at Worlds, right? Like that's just so cool, you know? Like those moments are the real memories, I think. So I'm really hoping that we can like get Niantic to at least do some of their own stuff if they won't use the community's, you know, competitive scene, that maybe, but like it's doesn't matter to me as long as we're getting these big in-person tournaments. Like then I think legends are being made and everybody knows their name, and that's living the childhood dream. You're a Pokemon master, you know?
Talking about experiences, I don't think I will ever forget being at Chicago Worlds, even though it may have been a bit of a gaffe, us, you know, getting kicked out into the street, but watching that battle happen live on the sidewalk and, you know, lifting the trophy at the end. You got Marco, people holding umbrellas over them so that they can battle. It was just, it was amazing. You know, Nick had to grab onto the back of my collar so I could pull him through the crowd so that he could video some of it. But I think some of those iconic moments, and then, you know, obviously like the Ludicolo dance at Dortmund, and having, you know, the guys down in South America, you know, drinking Red Bull on stream and watching these guys go back and forth. Some of the just the absolute best talent in the world go head to head. I'm just ecstatic and super excited to see what season 2 has for us this year. So there was a couple questions in the chat. I think someone wanted to know what your favorite Pokemon was before we end this hour segment.
I don't win any friends with this one, but one of my favorite Pokemon always has been Arcanine. I don't know why, but I think it was back when I was into the Pokemon cards as a little kid. It wasn't, I don't even think Arcanine had a shiny, but like I just thought that card was the coolest, and like it's like a dog, but like just so much more legendary. And then like I guess it is, they call it like a pseudo legendary, but I've just always thought like, man, if I had to have a real life Pokemon, like that's probably the one I would choose, as long as like the laws of physics were such that he wasn't like lighting things on fire all the time. And I don't know how these like fire Pokemon, like in the anime, they just like pick them up and stuff, and it's like that thing is hotter than 10,000 suns according to the Pokedex, so you better put that down. Anyway, I love Arcanine, and it's useless everywhere, but I love it anyway.
So I just have to say personally, for me, I can't tell you how much it's meant to me as a community organizer, as kind of a content creator. I wouldn't call myself that, but you know, working with Go Stadium and trying to grow PvP and grow this community. I can't thank you enough. Thank the whole team at Silph for all the hard work that they've done throughout this past year. I'm sure even past this past year that work was happening, and all the continued work that's happening right now. I'm sure there's people right now working on something for Silph Arena. So thank you. If you're watching, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for what you've done. Thank you for what you're going to do. And we really appreciate you. I think this whole community does. And so we really appreciate you giving the community this opportunity to kind of just get to know you a little better. And thank you formally for all the hard work that you have done and the whole Silph team has done.
Well, thanks for the kind words. I'll pass that on to the team. It means a lot. I think a lot of the team comes up against I don't want to call them haters, because I think a lot of times people who are upset at the arena are upset with valid reasons, like something went bad at their tournament, or they feel like something's too expensive and it's hindering their ability to get more people at their tournament. You know, I mean, those are all real, and they're real problems. So, I mean, I will say we really need the feedback. Like, I think I always look at the arena Discord, and there's so many people in there, but it's like quiet when we like announce things, and it's like, dude, you guys gotta like talk more. Like, some people are very good at, you know, talking about it, but the more feedback we get, the better. The more experiences we hear about, the more anecdotes, things that went right, things that went wrong. I mean, it all helps us keep, you know, on the right, you know, direction, because we have to make a lot of guesses. We have to make a lot of educated guesses. Like, should we do this policy-wise? Is this going to have this side effect? You know, it's constant, those kind of discussions for the arena team. And there's a lot of people who are frustrated about this or that on any given day. And so a lot of the team comes up against that, frustrated folks, and they don't always get the thank yous. So I appreciate this little hashtag, thank you Silph, right next to thank you Niantic. I mean, it does feel thankless sometimes, and I think for a lot of our team that are working behind the scenes, it feels extra thankless. So I think it's really good for them to hear from the people that have had a great experience, and you know, that makes it worth it, I think, for the whole team. So thank you for that. We got a lot on deck. Honestly, this next year, I mean, more than just new metas, the arena's looking to make things better in a bunch of different ways. I'm sure we'll talk about it more, but I think I'll just wrap up with a thank you back at you guys. Appreciate like Go Stadium and all that you guys have been doing to get like information out there, understanding of mechanics, to make it easier, to lower the barriers to getting into the ecosystem. It's such a high barrier to getting into this ecosystem, and information and getting confidence is, you know, just difficult to acquire. So all the resources, infographics, things you do in your Discord to get information out, I mean, all of it is really, really valuable. So thank you for, you know, doing all of that stuff. Honestly, it's not that big of an ecosystem. So what you've done has made a big dent, and we really do appreciate that. So here's to a bright 2020. Thanks again.
I need everyone watching to make sure that you are sending your thank yous to the Silph team, sending your thank yous on social media. Use that hashtag. Let's really show them how much we appreciate them. I'd like all the community organizers, you know, let's use this as a call to action, and let's really push this forward as we continue to grow this. It's extremely valuable that we have such a great platform in Silph, in the Silph Arena, and the Silph Road as a whole. So again, we can't thank you enough. We really appreciate all that you've done, and we look forward to continuing to see what comes from Silph, and just, you know, all of us that are really working on this ecosystem to kind of push it forward and make it something really great for all the communities around the world. So and that's what this whole 24-hour stream is about. It's about thanking you guys. It's about shedding some light on those different content creators. I believe we've got up next the G2G media team, who have, you know, started posting articles and different things. So, you know, getting to know some of the creators that have really been influenced by this platform, by Silph Arena, by the Silph Road, being able to create content centered around something that they really enjoy in Pokemon Go PvP. So again, we really appreciate everything that you've done. We're going to raid all of you viewers over to G2G Media, and then after they get done with their block, we're going to continue raiding for the next 24 hours in celebration of 1 year of Pokemon Go PvP, and just thanking everyone at the Silph team, at Niantic, for all the hard work that they've done. So once again, thank you, Dronpes. Thank you, all of you viewers, for watching. Thank all the battlers, all the girls that PvP, whatever you want to call yourselves. Thank you for all that you've done. And thank you for continuing to make this community strong. So let's raid, and thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.